The views expressed on the following program do not necessarily reflect the views of Money Radio staff, management, or advertisers, and do not represent an offer to buy or sell any securities. Some interviews heard on this program may be sponsored by the participants. It's time for Health Futures with Cypress Home Care Solutions, Bob Roth. This is Arizona's only show dedicated to providing you with expert advice on how to live a longer, healthier, and happier life. To learn more, call 602-264-8009. That's 602-264-8009. Now, here's your host, Bob Roth.
Good afternoon and welcome to Health Futures, taking stock in you. If you are just tuning in the first time, we are a show about how our older adult population can live a healthier, happier life. We're doing this by coming at you live from the Scottsdale Air Park studios of Money Radio at 1510 AM, 105.3 FM, and the World Wide Web at moneyradio1510.com. And what really makes this show is our guests. We've been on the air now for 8 years. We've done over 400 shows, and you can catch them right up on our website at cypresshomecare.com. Click on the media button. Third button down is radio show, and you can catch this show and many others. So as I said, guests make our show, and I'm really pleased to have this guest on. I've had the privilege of knowing Bill Dombi, who is the president and CEO of the National Association of Home Care and Hospice. Bill, you and I go back probably 13, 14 years. It is a pleasure to have you here on the show. I've talked to you about having you on, and I wish you were here in the studio. I know you wish you were here in sunny Arizona, but you are coming at us through technology as well as through the phone line. So welcome to Health Futures, Bill Dombi.
Thank you, Bob, for the opportunity to spend some time with you and your audience today. Really looking forward to it.
Well, I'm looking forward to having you too, and certainly home care is something that is really gaining a lot of, let's call it popularity, if you will, during this pandemic. Seema Verma, who was the former administrator for CMS, she made a statement that really shined a bright light on home care. She said that residential care will always be an essential part of the care continuum, but our goal must always be to give residents options and keep our loved ones in their own homes and communities for as long as possible. She also went on to say that home and community-based care is not only frequently more cost-effective, but is preferred by seniors and adults with disabilities seeking to maintain the dignity of independent living. And she went on to say that this pandemic has certainly shown a huge spotlight on communal living and some of the challenges that communal living has had. And for us, that we've been in home care at Cypress now for 27 years. I know the National Association of Home Care and Hospice goes by the acronym NAC, has been around for, 35 years? How long has NAC been around?
Actually, we started in 1982. The formation of NAC was by combining several other national organizations into one to be the unified voice of healthcare at home.
Wow, so 39 years is my math. Wow, a long time. And You have been a longtime friend, and I'd love for you to share with our listeners what is NAC, the National Association of Home Care and Hospice, and what does that mean to our listeners?
Well, NAC is the leading voice supporting healthcare services at home in Washington, D.C. It's otherwise known as a trade association that we represent the providers of that care, the companies that provide nursing, therapy, home care aid services, services to children, services to senior citizens, and everyone in between. But we're the voice before Congress. We're the voice before the Medicare program and Medicaid program and a variety of other federal agencies that support home and community-based care. We also have a voice at the state level through our affiliated state home care associations. So we hope we make good policy. We hope we're a good representative, not only of the providers of care, but of the people receiving the care too. Because when you put the main business purpose together with the main ingredient to success for home care, it is putting patients first.
Indeed. And we do know that home is where people prefer to receive care. And certainly, the vision that, I have really learned and been a part of in the strategic planning with the National Association of Home Care and Hospice is we see a world where home is the center of care. And, I'd love for you to just give a brief overview in terms of what care can be provided in home today, where in yesterday it couldn't be provided.
Well, yeah, it is an endless series of things, but I'll give you the abbreviated version of it. But just to put it into some context, we have right now well over 12 million individuals receiving one form or another of health care at home through paid caregivers, and many more, obviously, through family members and the like. But we're looking at a population of services to, say, pediatric patients, very young children born with some level of deformity or other clinical condition that requires private duty nursing services. And there are actually several 100,000 of those individuals all throughout the country. At the other bookend of that is hospice services. And I'll give you a little more detail on the hospice services. It is end-of-life care. It is for individuals who are looking for comfort rather than cure. Individuals who are on hospice are generally paid for under the Medicare program, but there are some who would come through their own health care insurance because they're not yet eligible for Medicare services. Hospice is nursing, it's therapy, it's all the pharmaceuticals that you may need. It is home care aid services. Everything including bereavement comes within hospice. It is a fully bundled benefit of services. And right now we're looking at about 1.5 million people receiving hospice services on an annual basis. Over 50% of all the Medicare population that dies in a given year has used hospice. Typically, it's a benefit for people who have, by a normal course of events, 6 months or less to live. So at one end, we've got that pediatric private duty nursing. At the other end, end-of-life hospice services. But in between, we have a whole host of services that involve nurses and physical therapists, speech-language pathologists, occupational therapists, respiratory therapists, nutritional therapists, nurse practitioners, physicians, all going into the home, in addition to what is a very essential service, and that's the people who provide support with activities of daily living. Home care aides, home health aides is one of the titles given to those individuals. And when you're really looking at the breadth of home care, you can't leave out one other aspect, and that's technology. There are significant numbers of what we'll call virtual visits now coming between nurses and their patients, therapists and their patients as well, doing a whole host of services that during the pandemic has proven very, very helpful to be able to do with telehealth on a virtual basis rather than on an in-person basis. So I'll tie that all together with, we're looking at nearly 4 million people working to provide that care of all types of healthcare disciplines. We are seeing one thing that is evolving quite quickly, and that is now the willingness of physicians to do in-person visits at home as well. So much of what's happening in home care is an evolution, but it's been accelerated in the pandemic, where healthcare services of all types are now looking to see how can they provide it at home.
The breadth of the types of services is huge, and I want to unpack a couple things. We have just about a minute left in this segment, but the first one I want to unpack is the hospice piece. And, a lot of people believe that hospice is a place, and it's really not a place, it's a concept. And 98%, maybe even 99% of the care that hospice is delivering is right there in the home. And I think so many people, don't even realize that. And as you said, it's a Medicare benefit. We have a great hospice here who, Hospice of the Valley. And Hospice of the Valley has this program that CMS created, and that is the Centers of Medicare and Medicaid Services that they're able to offer. It's called Medicaring, which allows people who are needing hospice, but allowing them to do curative treatments as well. So you have to qualify for that, but it's really a nice benefit. Bill, it goes fast. We're one down. We got 3 more to go, but it's such a pleasure having you here on the show. You're coming at us from Maryland. I believe you live in Annapolis, right?
Live south of Annapolis, just outside of D.C.
And how's the weather there today?
You know, I'm in my home office. The blinds are closed. I think it's sunny, but I'm not sure.
But not golfing yet.
No, people will be golfing today, but a little different than the golfing in Arizona, where they will be probably wearing shorts and have big smiles on their faces instead of wearing mittens and knitted hats.
We're down one segment. We're here coming at you live from the Scottsdale Studio, Air Park Studios, Money Radio. I got Bill Dombi in the studio. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Now back to Health Futures, taking stock in you. If you have questions about your own or your loved one's future health care, call 602-264-8009. Now, here's your host, Cypress Home Care Solutions, Bob Roth.
Welcome back. You're listening to Health Futures, taking stock in you. And if you're just joining us, we're in our second segment. And I'm really pleased to have in the studio, or actually coming at us through technology and the telephone lines, I got Bill Dombi. He is the president and CEO of the National Association of Home Care and Hospice. If you missed our first segment, you can catch it right up on our website at cypresshomecare.com. Click on the media button, third button down is radio show. You'll catch that first segment and over 400 others we've been bringing to you for the last 8 years. So what we talked about a lot in the first segment was we talked about care being delivered in the home, and we learned a lot about the National Association of Home Care and Hospice, which was formed back in 1982, 39 years. It's incredible what they do. Bill took us through the whole portfolio of offerings that are happening in the home, and we started unpacking them just before we ended the first segment. I was talking about hospice, and Bill also talked to us about over 12 million people are receiving care in the home, and 4 million people are working to provide care. You talked to us about also technology, and there's a couple things I want to talk about. I want to talk about 4 million people delivering care in the home, and Bill, you've said this before. The demand is outstripping the supply, and workforce is a huge, huge challenge. I was really pleased last month to have Todd Laporte. He's the president and CEO of Honor Health. They're a healthcare system here in the Arizona market, 9th largest employer. They have 6 or 7 hospitals, over 30 urgent care centers and physician practices. And unbeknownst to me, and I was so glad that Todd mentioned this, and that was he was making an appeal here on our station about getting people into the workforce. He said, Bob needs them in his company. We need them in hospitals. And Bill, we certainly need them in home care. Love for you to talk a little bit about workforce and the challenge that we have. And then we'll probably punt over to talk a little bit about technology.
With the demographics, demand can be expected to grow, but also with the expansion and capabilities of care in the home through technology, you've seen just that demand continue to rise for these services, which means workforce, because so much of it, in spite of the technology advances there, are still in-person services. And in every single discipline, there is a growing need. But different reasons why there may be some shortages. Nurses' needs continue to grow, but the aging of that workforce and the absence of really a serious educational effort and recruitment effort, is causing a shortage of those nurses. In home care, the nurses generally are highly experienced because they're operating on an independent level. But there are efforts underway to try to speed up the competency creation of those nurses through various practicums within nursing schools, internships in home care services. As I mentioned, they're out in independent practice, and they don't have the ability to turn to a supervisor easily and say, what should I do next? They have to handle it themselves. So that's why they're often in need of experience. The hardest job in home care by far is the home care aide job. And again, they go by a variety of labels, but these are individuals who help people with activities of daily living. Anything from ambulation, getting to and from the bathroom, getting out of bed, even individuals who are helped to restore some function through exercise programs. But activities of daily living, you can think about those things you all do and say, if he can't walk, how am I going to walk? If I can't sit up, how am I going to sit up? If I can't eat, how am I going to eat? And these people do that work. But it's very, very hard because physically it's demanding. Beyond that, it is also sometimes trying. Caring for a patient with dementia can sometimes lead to really difficult mental stresses for that worker. But on the other side of it is the incredible rewards of caring for people, to be able to really feel you're contributing to the greater good overall there. And so the shortages are primarily driven not because the work's hard, not because that the nurses aren't capable of doing all the things, but it's just that the demand continues to rise out there. And what we are hoping for, what we're working towards, and we are seeing some of this coming through the pandemic, is that more and more people in the workforce are becoming aware of what an incredible career it is to be able to work in home care, how rewarding emotionally it can be to work in home care, and looking to it as also a pretty stable job, because it may be that your neighborhood restaurant's going to close or your department store is going to shut down, but the care needs for particularly those people over age 65 is just going to continue to grow along with that 65 population. So we've seen the respect meter growing for that workforce. One very important thing I want to make sure I say is when it came to COVID-19 and frontline workers, home care was there from day one, caring for tens of thousands of patients who were infected, but also avoiding the infection of the rest of the patient population through just high-quality infection control, everything from the PPE, the personal protective equipment, on through. So workforce, an issue in healthcare overall, workforce, an issue in home care. But as Todd mentions, in his state, his time on the show, people should really take a look at home care as a career, because they're going to be able to wake up every morning and think how valuable they are.
No, I appreciate you sharing that. And certainly, we have in home care, and certainly at NAC, and for us that are in this space, we're dealing with a slippery slope right now. And I'd love for you to talk a little bit about the stimulus and the $15 minimum wage and the need for a livable wage for these workers. But at the same time, it needs to be affordable for the people that are receiving it. And, we've experienced right here in our state, Bill, a minimum wage increase over the last 7-8 years that went from below $7 to $12.15. And the average hourly cost for home care has gone up as much in some cases as $10 an hour. And the consumers didn't just get $10 more in their pocket.
And this is a serious issue. I know you, Bob, as an employer, want to support your workforce. I mean, that's what matters, in the delivery of home care. And that's the same with the thousands of home care companies all across the country. They want to honor their workforce with a living wage. But they have two issues that have to be addressed. And essentially, we're saying take the minimum wage issue out of a vacuum and put it into real life. If you want to accomplish what the intention is in raising the minimum wage, then we see some parties who have to come to the table from the government to make that work. Another lawyer wouldn't agree with me, but the largest employer, in quote sense, of a low-paid workforce who does incredibly hard work is the federal and state government through the state Medicaid programs, where they do not pay adequate rates to the provider of the services in order to afford better compensation to their workforce. And if the minimum wage goes up to, say, $15 an hour and these state Medicaid programs, do not come up with their share of it, there's not going to be home care services. The other side of it is on a private pay side of it. When your minimum wage went up in the state of Arizona and you had to raise the charges to your private pay patients, there are patients who simply said, I can't afford it. And we do not want to see home care become the care site only for the wealthy. And even when you look at it one step removed from that, people who stay at home paying privately for care are saving Medicaid dollars themselves, because that individual who ends up in a nursing home almost invariably ends up on the state Medicaid program paying for that nursing home. So we see there's a need for not only Medicaid to raise its rates for home care services, but to support the private pay patient. We see a need for such things as tax credits or help subsidizing, the purchase of that care, so the workers can actually survive living-wise, high-quality care, avoiding turnover of workforce, but still the return on investment will be there for society at large in so many ways, including financial. They will save money by keeping people at home.
Absolutely. And that is some of the work that the National Association of Home Care and Hospice does for this trade, is they are lobbying and doing advocacy work in Washington, D.C., as well as in the various states that they need to advocate for the workforce that is doing this great work, and certainly the agencies that are employing these workers. I want our listeners to know that people that are in the home are the ones that see the change of condition. And if we can mitigate an experience where a medical event could be averted and the ambulance doesn't come, the cost savings to our Medicaid and Medicare system is huge. It's absolutely huge. And that's why we want care in the home, right, Bill? That's why we as agencies, as well as the consumers, we want to be at home. We're at halftime here, Bill. I got a lot more to talk to you about. I do want to talk about technology as well. Stick around. I got Bill Dombi, the president and CEO of the National Association of Home Care and Hospice, in the studio. We will be right back.
Now back to Health Futures, taking stock in you. If you have questions about your own or your loved one's future health care, call 602-264-8009. Now, here's your host, Cypress Home Care Solutions, Bob Roth.
Welcome back. You're listening to Health Futures, taking stock in you. And if you're just tuning in, we're in our second half here. I have the pleasure of having Bill Dombi here with me at Health Futures. He is the president and CEO of the National Association of Home Care and Hospice. If you missed our first half, you can catch it right up on our website at cypresshomecare.com. Click on the media button, third button down is radio show. So we covered a lot of territory in the first half, and what we left off was talking about workforce, and we were talking about the need to get more people into this workforce. And I mentioned that I had Todd Laporte, the president and CEO of Honor Health, here, and he made that appeal. And Bill, I hear you making that appeal as well. We need more workers. We are aging at such a phenomenal rate. I mean, here in Arizona, by 2030, we're going to have more people 65 and older than we are going to have 18 and younger. So the need is so great. I know that the Paraprofessional Healthcare Institute, which is a trade group out of New York, they estimate that we'll have a shortfall by 2026 of 1.8 million direct care workers. And that's something, Bill, that immigration can't solve. It can help, but we need to make an appeal to get other people into this workforce. So I thank you for bringing that up. We also talked about $15 minimum wage. We talked about the affordability challenges. But we do know that home is the safest place to be. It's the most desired place to be. And, I wanted you to talk a little bit about that. More importantly, talk about this generational shift that we're having right now. And a lot of people aren't talking about it. In 2011, there were, 10,000 people a day turning 65. Well, guess what? In 2021, there are 10,000 people a day turning 75. And, with that, we know that 65 and older, I believe the statistic is 70% of those 65 and older have at least 2 comorbidities. So they have needs. And how are we going to do this?
Well, one thing that wasn't mentioned was the role that's being played by family caregivers, which for, decades, if not centuries, has been the mainstay of keeping people at home. AARP estimates that the value of that informal caregiver or family caregiver service is over $500 billion a year. Now, when I look at it somewhat from a personal perspective, I compare my situation to that of my parents. My parents had 4 children, and when they aged and needed services to keep them at home, that meant they had 4 children and the spouses of those 4 children, perhaps, to play a part in helping that make that actually happen. Whereas I have 2 children, and you know, to start with, I'm not sure they want to try to care for me to begin with, but just the math is simple, that the resources are less than for me in my generation when I turned 75 than with my parents. And as you mentioned, for Arizona, with where things will be in short term with the over 65 population being greater than the under 18 population, a resource for care in the home will not be there. And so we've got a compound issue of a paid caregiver workforce that is stretched thin today and will be insufficient very soon, along with a family caregiver workforce that also will be there. So we are counting on technology to help out on this a bit. I know that there was a professor emeritus at MIT who had invented Roomba, the vacuum cleaner, and he was working on a caregiving robot. He seems to have backed away from that because obviously you can imagine it's pretty difficult to create that. But I have this kind of science fiction vision of instead of there being a Terminator, kind of robot in the future, it's a Carinator who can provide care. But this is it a crisis? It's going to be equivalent of a crisis, and that's why we need to make a career in delivering this care something that people aspire to. I think that's definitely possible because, as I mentioned in the other segment, it's really, really rewarding.
It's funny because I remember being at a conference a few years back, and you played an excerpt from a movie called The Robot and Frank. And, while that was a little science fiction, we know that robots can't replace people, and people need people. I mean, look, Bill, we already had a social isolation issue for our older adults before this pandemic, and this has just made it so much worse. Not even just for older people. We could have a whole discussion about the kids and what's happening to children not being in school, but the loneliness that comes along with being alone is tremendous. And how do we fix this? And I think it's a great segue into the next thing I want to talk about is technology. And you had said that. I mean, technology is not going to replace people, but it certainly enhances the way we deliver care and really connect with people.
Yeah, you need to look at it as a tool in the caregiving toolbox and a very valuable tool, and compare it to, our forefathers who were cutting down trees, to build homes, and they were using, total manual labor with axes. And today we have all kinds of power equipment. That's how we're going with healthcare in the home. These tools are being continually created to handle all kinds of functions that are there. And a lot of investment is going into dealing with the issue of loneliness, the issue of that isolation that comes for somebody with multiple illnesses that are staying at home, to be able to connect and still have, a life which can be exciting that way. So, but these tools are like a tool in anybody's workshop. You got all different kinds of tools. You have tools today in telehealth that allow nurses to go into the home in a two-way audio video to actually do wound care, observation, and actions where a family member may be there to change the dressing on the wound, but only after the nurse is able to assess whether that wound is infected, whether or not it's healing, whether or not some change of treatment may be necessary. You have therapists going in the home, teaching people to walk again through that two-way audio visual communications, and not through complicated, massive computer approaches, but from a typical smartphone, being able to do that. And do it, not just do it, but do it quite effectively. And then an added benefit of that comes is the ability actually to bring a team into the home, even at the same time. So the primary care physician's there with the nurse and the therapist and the family members and the patient, all putting together that plan of care that will keep that individual getting safe and effective care in their own home where they want to be. So this is better than delivered pizza. You know, you're bringing a whole suite of healthcare professionals into the care of people at home. And there was a survey done by AARP, and they've done it frequent times, and they said 9 out of 10 people would prefer to be cared for their health care at home. And I've raised the question, what's wrong with that 10th person? Because who wouldn't want it there?
Right.
But there's a further added benefit when you combine this technology with a multidisciplinary team delivering effective care in the home setting. The pandemic has shown we also have a much more safer environment to do that in. Is there a safer place to be than your own home? When there is a virus running rampant throughout our world, of course not. They talk about quarantining. Well, this is effectively the most comfortable quarantining you can do when you're sick, is doing it in your own home. So we see the future of technology really being important there. And you can look out at technologists and you see they agree, because the Microsofts of the world, the Amazons of the world, all of those technology wizards that are there are involved in care in the home now, for self-care as well as becoming a tool to support care. So they can't be all wrong, can they?
No, they can't. And, some of the stuff I'm seeing technology-wise, Bill, is just off the chart amazing. I just saw some technology that was created in Israel where you can use a device and look at the device, and you can measure blood pressure, you can measure heart rate, you can measure pulse ox, and you don't have devices connected to it. I'm like, wow, because it is really hard to do RPM type work when you got to connect all the pieces and parts. But if you can keep it down to one device, whether it be a tablet or a phone, and be able to get that kind of output, and then push that up to a cloud and share that with family members and practitioners, that's kind of like Star Trek type stuff.
Actually, probably beyond Star Trek even at this point. But we certainly have those communicators that Star Trek had within its 1960s kind of view of the future. So, when you really look down at healthcare at home, you see that partnership with technology that is going to create more and more options and more positive outcomes for patients. And with a generation as they are, people aren't afraid of that technology anymore. They're not put off by the technology. It's a natural thing to do.
I appreciate you taking some time and sharing with our listeners about some of the stuff that is happening around technology. We're getting ready to end a third segment, and we're going to start the fourth in a few minutes here. I want to talk about the pandemic. I want to talk about COVID. I'd like to talk about vaccinations and testing. We've all had to take a crash course in this, and vaccinations is obviously something that is near and dear to all of us. You and I spoke before we even got online. Arizona's doing a really nice job of it. Not all states are. I know you're dealing with some challenges in Maryland and certainly in the D.C. area. I want to also talk about these homebound seniors, the ones that really, truly need to get vaccinated, and how do we get injections into their arms? You've been listening to Health Futures Taking Stock in You. I've got Bill Dombi here with me. He's coming to us from Annapolis, Maryland, thanks to technology and the phone lines. We will be right back. We're going to take a break right now. Stick around.
Now back to Health Futures, taking stock in you. If you have questions about your own or your loved one's future health care, call 602-264-8009. Now, here's your host, Cypress Home Care Solutions, Bob Roth.
Welcome back. You're listening to Health Futures, Taking Stock in You. I'm your host, Bob Roth. If you're just tuning in, we're in our fourth segment, and I've got Bill Dombi with me. He's coming at us from Annapolis, Maryland. He is the president and CEO of the National Association of Home Care and Hospice, and he's been a friend of mine for 13, 14 years and a great friend to Home Care and Hospice. We've covered a lot of stuff, and I just urge you to go out to our website after our show today to pick up this show in its entirety, as well as about 400 others that we've been bringing to you. You can go to cypresshomecare.com, click on the media button, third button down is radio show. So when we left off in our last segment, we talked a lot about technology and innovation and how that has changed the shape and the way care is being delivered in the home. I teed this one up talking about the pandemic and talking about vaccinations and testing. You know, Bill, you were speaking at a conference just recently, and it was the Private Duty Leadership Conference, and you said that the initial weeks and months of the pandemic hit the private duty and other home care providers hard, especially as revenue declined when many patients declined to take care at all that was ordered to them. Already difficult staffing and scheduling became even harder as caregivers were unwilling or unable to report, and agencies found themselves spending as much as 10% of their revenues on PPE. You know, things have now somewhat stabilized, and I really wanted to talk to you about PPE, and we can talk about that, but I also want to talk to you about testing, and I want to talk to you about vaccinations, and what do you see in terms of us taking care of those homebound seniors, protecting one of our most vulnerable going forward?
Well, when you look at the population in care at home, essentially they're in the high priority classes for vaccine access. We, though, have the same issues that are there in our society at large. There's a combination of access issues as well as issues related to hesitancy to accept the vaccine. But for the homebound patient, more than anything else, the issue is access. You know, we see states all across the country setting up mass immunization sites, local pharmacies getting vaccines to administer to people on a scheduled basis, the hospitals and the health departments having access to it. But those are vaccines that you come to get rather than get to you. And the homebound population, certainly there's some individuals who can travel to get a vaccine somewhere, but they're not going to stand in line at a mass immunization site for 6 hours to get a vaccine. They're not physically capable of doing that. And then there's some who can't leave the home at all. So over the last several months, we have been in contact with the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control, as well as the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, getting them to start thinking, how do you handle the homebound patient, that is at such high risk to get the vaccines? The logistics are difficult. There's absolutely no doubt whatsoever about that. The storage and transportation of the vaccines, because of the refrigeration, if not freezing responsibilities, keep those vaccines appropriate, are major difficulties. But nonetheless, we've got 12 million people who are highly at risk if they don't get a vaccine. So the good news is that after all of those months of trying to get them to take some action, we have a door that opened to us at the White House for a meeting on Monday, a virtual door. We're not going to the White House, of course, to get things moving in terms of caring for those homebound patients. The CDC had already put out a series of protocols for the actual administration, but that meant once you're in the home with the syringe in hand, what are you supposed to do? As compared to how do you get the vaccine in the first place? How do you get it to the person, et cetera? So we do see some light at the end of the tunnel in that regard, and hope to see some real solutions coming in. There is a massive set of resources out there that can be tapped, and we're seeing some of that happening on the local level already, where you're seeing EMS services, emergency medical services and such doing it. We're seeing traveling delivery of vaccines to people, and we're seeing the home care providers, the nurses, providing that. So, but this needs to be done on a massive scale. The second part of that, though, is the staff. These staff are all high priority, essential healthcare workers too, and we have to break a roadblock in one particular place, and that is on the hesitancy side. Many of the workers who particularly provide the personal care services are saying no to the vaccine. So there's a very active campaign ongoing, trying to inform individuals of how, appropriate, how safe and effective the vaccines can be. But people are still responding, saying, well, you're going to plant a chip in me through the vaccine. You're going to alter my DNA. I'm going to get COVID-19 through the vaccine. None of those things are true. But we have to make sure people have access to reliable information, raise the trust level relative to that information, because we're kind of all in this together. And getting the vaccine is proving more and more likely that it helps you prevent transmitting any virus to anybody else too, not just getting the virus yourself.
No, it's so true. And, that will certainly help us try to get to that herd immunity if we can get more shots in people's arms, and certainly on some of the most vulnerable. We have less than a minute left, and, I would be remiss in not talking about testing. And it's something that, my wife Susie and I are very much an advocate of. I just wrote a column in the local Jewish News about rapid antigen testing versus PCR testing. And, for some reason, long-term care facilities and the healthcare continuum is so hell-bent on doing PCR testing, and, it gives false positives. We need to know if someone's transmissible. We know that the stimulus has about $40 billion in that budget for testing. I will tell you, Bill, if you're talking to the White House, ask them to appropriate a portion of that for rapid antigen testing, because that'll tell you right then and there, affordable rapid antigen testing, if you are transmissible. Bill Dombi.
Well,
go ahead.
I could say, I think some of it will be coming your way. But thank you for the opportunity here today, Bob.
Thank you, Bill. It's great to see you, and I look forward to being able to see and visit with you in person, and maybe go hit the links one day. That would be great. You've been listening to Health Futures, Taking Stock in You. I'm your host, Bob Roth, and Bill Dombi has been sharing the microphone with me. It's really been great having you on. Take care, be safe, and say hello to Lynn for me. Take care, bye-bye.
There's no place like home. You've been listening to Bob Roth's Health Futures. If you have questions about your own or your loved one's future health care, call Cypress Home Care Solutions at 602-264-8009. That's 602-264-8009. Or visit cypresshomecare.com. Be sure to join Health Futures with Bob Roth every Friday at noon, right here on Money Radio 1510 and 105.3